Hi guys, I'm Erica. Welcome to Hack Your Health. Today I'm going to show you how to make beef jerky that's suitable for people who are using diet to help with autoimmune diseases. So the recipe that I'm going to be using, which I'm kind of half making up, so it's a little bit experimental, is going to be specific carbohydrate diet friendly. And if you don't want to use the soy sauce, you can replace it with coconut aminos, or you could just replace it with salt and water. So I'll give those options as I'm going through the recipe. Of course, this recipe is suitable for people who aren't healing from autoimmune diseases, but since that's the focus of my channel, I've done my best to make it the most versatile recipe that can be used by the largest number of people. First, I'll just show you the ingredients. So the ingredients that I'm going to be including are soy sauce and black pepper. I'm gonna include it, but it's optional. And I'm gonna throw in a few bay leaves because I just have some and they're good for kind of the whole soaking seasoning process, but those are also, of course, optional. And then garlic, this is ginger and honey. So these are my ingredients. And while I am cutting up these, I have my beef in the freezer because putting it in the freezer for half an hour to an hour will make it easier to cut. As always, I recommend using a decent sized knife and a cutting board. I also have this large bowl, and I'm just gonna put all the ingredients into the bowl because this is what I'm gonna be soaking my beef in. So this is about 7 cloves of garlic, and since I want the juice and everything to come out of these, I'm going to use a garlic press, but if you don't have a garlic press, just finely chop them. And if you don't have a garlic press, keep in mind that it takes quite a lot longer to cut them. So if you're going to do this a lot, it might be a good investment. I'm just going to toss in the bay leaves because they don't need anything done to them. I've just washed off this ginger because we're not really eating it, it's just for marinade. I'm not going to bother peeling it. I'm just going to chop it up. I'm going to use a pretty big piece of ginger because I want there to be lots of flavor. So I'm feeling pretty satisfied with this size. They're pretty finely chopped. Some pieces are of course bigger than others, but this looks good to me. So this is what it looks like with the ginger, garlic, and the bay leaves. I'm going to add a generous amount of pepper. And I'm going to add 1 cup of soy sauce. And if it's not enough to cover it at the end, I'm just gonna add some water. If you don't want to use soy sauce, you can use coconut aminos, which will give a sweeter taste relative to soy sauce. And if you don't want to use either of those, you can mix 3 tablespoons of salt into water, and you're gonna have to heat up the water in order to do that. This is 250 milliliters, which is 1 cup of soy sauce. And this was almost the entire small bottle of soy sauce that I had, just to give you an idea of how much that is. And now I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of liquid honey. So there's the 3 tablespoons of honey. So I'm just going to set this aside while I prepare the beef. So this is my beef. It was $30 Canadian, and this is grass-fed, pasture-raised meat. So this is a bottom round roast, and the butcher recommended this one because it doesn't have any sinew or any tendons running through it. So the top round had a couple of sinews, so the way that you would need to cut it wouldn't just be straight through in order to get a good cut. That's what he recommended. And same with a few other cuts, they had tendons or other sinews running through it. So this one is a good straight through cut, and I'm gonna leave this fat on. He said that it would be good dried, so I'm gonna trust him on that. And this is definitely very cold. It was probably in the fridge for a good 40-45 minutes before I started cutting it, so I I'm going to try and cut this pretty thin. There we have it in slices. One thing the last few days have definitely taught me is that I need to sharpen my knife. Definitely use the sharpest knife that you have. So now I'm just going to cut it into these small slices. Oh yeah, and apparently if you cut it against the grain, it will be chewier, and if you cut it with the grain, it will be less chewy. So actually I'm going to cut it against the grain because I prefer chewier. So there we have the beef in the marinade, and I forgot to mention that this is 1.1 kilograms of bottom roast. So I'm just gonna try to get this as submerged as I can here. So I think it's pretty well submerged now that it's been mixed in, and I'm gonna leave this for about 4 hours. So what I'm gonna do is stir it after 2 hours so that any of these pieces that are only half under the mixture are gonna have a chance to marinate as well. And of course, as this marinades for the next 4 hours, I'm going to keep it in the fridge. I've let the jerky marinate for 4 hours now, and I did stir it at the 2 hour mark just to make sure that all of it had been submerged at some point underneath the liquid. And now I'm just gonna use a colander and drain off the rest of the liquid into the sink. As you can see, the jerky, or I should say the beef at this point still, is now a lot darker brown. It's been stained darker by the soy sauce, and you can see some of the parts that were probably above the line of the liquid, they're still red. So that is what the color difference here is basically just how submerged they were in the soy sauce. I've debated whether or not to rinse the rest of these garlic and ginger pieces off. And I suspect that in the dehydration process, most of them will fall off by themselves. So I think that I'm going to leave them on just to preserve as much of the flavor as I can. But if you don't really like the taste as much of garlic or ginger, you could also try rinsing this off. I just feel like if I rinse it, it's probably going to rinse off some of the taste. But of course, I'm not gonna use these bay leaves. And I've just stuck it back in the bowl so that it can continue to drain without making a huge mess all over my counter. This is the dehydrator that I'm gonna be using today. This is actually belonging to a friend of mine, and it only has one temperature setting, but for jerky, you generally wanna have it around 150 degrees Fahrenheit. And my dehydrator has currently been lent to a relative, but that one has different temperature settings, and I like that one a lot. So I'll put that one in the description box if you're looking for an inexpensive dehydrator. But this one is called Open Country Sportsman's Kitchen. So we can assume that this one is specifically for making jerky, but if you wanted to make like kale chips and dried fruit and other things like that, you would want to have a dehydrator that has multiple temperature settings. So I seem to have forgotten the bottom, which is a very important part of this whole thing. So here we go. I'm just going to start putting the jerky onto the dehydrator. Really, the only important thing here is that you want to make sure that there's quite a lot of space. Because if you put these all really close together, there won't be enough air circulation through the dehydrator. Like it basically is like a fan that blows air through. So if you block the flow of air, it's going to take a really, really long time for anything to dehydrate. So I just like to make sure that these are really evenly spaced. You can always err on the side of caution, so make it more spread out at first, and then if you find that you don't have enough stacks, you can always go through and move them a little bit close together. But I find it's better to just start with them pretty spread out. So now all I need to do is put the lid on, and if your dehydrator has a temperature setting, this is the point at which you would turn it to the correct temperature. But for this one, it just has an on and off button. And I'm gonna check this after 2 hours, but I'm guessing that it's gonna take about 4 hours for them to completely turn into jerky. So some of the smaller pieces might be ready sooner, and that's why I'm gonna check it. But for most of them, I'm guessing it's gonna take about 4 hours. It's been about 5.5, almost 6 hours. And I've taken some of the smaller pieces out already that were done earlier because they were thinner. And now the thicker pieces are also done, so they've gotten to a chewy texture. And I also pretty much have to go to bed now. So in the future, I would definitely slice these even thinner because some of these are still pretty thick, even though I didn't really realize it. So when you're slicing it, slice it as thin as you can. But I did try some of these and the taste is really good. And they're not very sweet. It's more of the ginger that you can taste. But I think that they turned out really well. You can see, yeah, some of these look way more like traditional jerky than others just because of the way that I cut them. But the next time, like I said, I would do them in a thinner slice. The butcher told me that even though online it seems like they never want you to use fat, he said that he really likes fat on jerky, so I'm going to trust him. So there we are, our full plate of jerky. So this is how much jerky came out of one roast, and I did eat a few pieces along the way, so it would have been slightly more than this, but yeah, here we go. So there's our finished product, this giant bowl of jerky, and you can keep this in the fridge for probably about 2 or 3 weeks. And of course, if you're just taking it out for the day, it doesn't really need to be refrigerated because it's infused with salt and dried, so it's pretty non-perishable at this point. They don't need to be in the fridge all the time, though they should be stored there. And what I actually like to do is put it in the freezer because that way you can just take out a few pieces at a time when you need it for a snack or something. And then you can pretty much keep it for as long as you like. So that's how you make homemade jerky. I really hope that this has been helpful to you. And if you have any questions, comments, or video suggestions, please let me know in the comments below. And if there's any other kind of food that you would like to see a video about or any kind of topic, please let me know because I'm interested in what you guys would like to see. And thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please push like. And if you want to see more of my health-related videos, you can always subscribe. And all the best on your healing journey. Okay, bye.